Hello, welcome to Litmus Live and welcome to my talk, Are Email Developers Still Needed? My name is Jay. I'm the head of development at ActionRocket. ActionRocket is a CRM and digital marketing agency based in London, in the UK. We work with a range of clients from Pizza Express, which is a chain restaurant, to bigger brands that most people know, like BBC and American Express. We do everything from email design systems, one-off interactive emails. Emails is kind of the thing we're known for and we have a good reputation for. But as a company, we work across in-app, push, messaging, strategy, design, web, app, basically anything digital, we're kind of involved. And I head up the development team. So there's a team of developers that all work across loads of different mediums and create anything that our clients need. And I am an email developer, have been an email developer since I started, nearly 10 years worth of email development. So really, my first question was, are email developers still needed? And yeah, I would say that they are. And I've got lots of reasons why I think we're still needed and why maybe it's just that the role is slightly changing. But then also, I'm just going to take you through kind of what you can do to be an email developer now, what you're going to do in the future, what the reasons are that people think that some email developers might not be around, why they may not be needed, and kind of work through it with my talk and hopefully help you out. So the reasons why people have kind of started to share that email developers might not be needed anymore. There's quite a few out there, and I'm just going to kind of run through them and give some reasons why I don't know if that's true, if they're myths, stuff like that. So first off, AI tools is kind of something that has been a big topic and has been kind of something that's really been spoke about recently about being replacing developers. There's lots of tools out there that do lots of different things, and I'm just going to touch on a few of them and why I think that things are not going to change too much. So the first thing is Figma to code tools, kind of like Emailify, Comby, Email Love, those kind of things. They all work in their own ways. They all do different things. Some of them work from components, some of them just work from Figma designs, and all of them create from a design into email code. They do it in all their own way. They have all different levels of code, from some of them that just slice images, some have proper live text, semantic HTML. Um, and really, I think that there is a place for these kind of tools. But one of the big things I want to get across in this talk is that email developers don't just change a design into a HTML. And maybe that was something that they used to do. But realistically now, a lot of the email developers I work with, the developers that work at brands, that's not all they do. There's so much more to their role. And this tool really could be something to help them rather than a reason to get rid of them. So if you have a tool where most of your emails are designed, most of them are components that you're just kind of adding in content to, then there's no reason why you can't use a Figma to HTML plugin that could kind of do that kind of business as usual stuff that happens all the time. You can get designers to change stuff. You don't need the developer to change stuff after things have been done. Um, yeah, I think that's something that could be something that would really help developers. And then, like, another part of AI is these Gen AI tools. So ChatGPT is kind of the biggest one, Claude, GitHub Copilot, all of these kind of things that kind of are seen as a way that you could create code and not need to be a developer. But I think anyone that's tried to kind of do a bit of code with one of these tools has realized that there's probably a lot more steps to it. So if you just type in, I want a HTML email that can have a hero and some text and a CTA button, you're going to get a bit of code, which isn't really going to do much for you. You've got to put it into your ESP. You've probably got to do a bit of personalization. You've got to adjust it because it's probably not going to be 100% there ready for going out to email clients. It's not going to have those fixes for Outlook, those different things that Gmail doesn't like, etc. So I kind of see these as tools to kind of help, but not things that are going to take over. So if you need to do 100 modules and they're all looking pretty similar and you've coded one, then one of these AI tools can probably help you repeat it and change things and do things like that. You can put in some code and query it and figure out what it's doing, that kind of thing. So I just don't think these tools can replace what an email developer does just yet, but they can definitely take a design and make it into code, or they can take some code and kind of help you with some code. They can help you finish that line of CSS. They can autofill the attribute for you with some generative AI. But what they can't do is kind of do all that other stuff that goes around email coding. WYSIWYG editors. What you see is what you get editors. These have been around for a long time. Like they were around before I started being an email developer, and they were around for web developers, and web developers still exist. And I think that WYSIWYG editors have their place, and they're definitely really good for brands and brand side teams. So, if you've only got one email developer, but you've got to get out loads of emails, then why not take your knowledge of an email design system, apply it to a tool which has a WYSIWYG editor like Litmus Builder or Parcel or Taxi or Alpaca or any of the millions of the ones out there that are kind of editors for you to kind of put in your own code and then let someone else edit it visually. I think they're a great tool for this kind of process. Another thing that they help is those small changes that you don't really need to be doing as an email developer. Like if you want to change a word, you don't really want the copywriter, the strategist, the email marketer to come to you and be like, oh, we've spelt this wrong. Can you please go into the code and change it? Why not just give them access to your WYSIWYG editor to let them do it? Why do you have to be the person to do all of those changes in the code? And some WYSIWYG editors used to be bad, or some maybe still are bad. Some maybe have lots of code bloat. They've got classes, IDs, they've got multiple tables where they don't need multiple tables. But realistically, they're all getting better. And all the ones that I mentioned earlier, they allow you to add your own code. So you can control the standard, you can control the level of accessibility, you can control how much you change in dark mode and you can choose how it's coded. So, like, if you can do that and have a visual editor, then that's going to help you. But I don't think that's going to get you still need someone to make that code to become a WYSIWYG editor. So, I just don't think that's going to be a reason to get rid of email developers. An email design system is very similar to a WYSIWYG editor, but slightly different. In this case, you do all the code as an email developer, and then you take that email design system and you give it to your team. And maybe they don't know what every single line of code is, but they know enough that they can take a module, move it around, change the images, change the text, etc. And that's kind of where a lot of email developers started. They have a template that or a DDS that they've started with, they adjust it, they change it. That's how they figure out how things work. And I just don't think if a brand has an email design system, they don't ever need an email developer. They still need someone to set it up to begin with. But then also, emails change a lot, so you're probably going to need an email developer anyway. So reasons that I think email developers are still going to be around. Maybe they won't be called email developers only, but email developers are still definitely going to be around. The first one is HTML and CSS knowledge. So if you talk to a lot of developers out there, HTML and CSS is not their favorite thing. That's not the thing they work with day to day. That's not the thing they're looking at all the time. Whereas for us as HTML email developers, we are looking at this all the time because it's the only stuff that we can use. We haven't got JavaScript or anything that can kind of change things or do things or present things in different ways. We have to use HTML and CSS, and we have to use it in a certain way. And we know some things that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know the semantic difference between a B tag or a strong tag and how one has slightly more emphasis from an assistive screen reader point of view, or how it behaves when it's shown in the styling, how the default styling changes for those across email clients and web browsers. So that's something that you know that maybe a lot of other people don't know. And then while I've been talking, I've put that bit of code on the screen and there's errors in there. And I deliberately put the errors in there because you guys are automatically thinking about what is on screen, what could it be, and why have I done it that way? And you're kind of analyzing what's going on and you're seeing what the problems are. So I've fixed those errors in this page. There's 7 of them. I've kind of gone through, figured out what all the problems were, and then I've corrected them. And then I'm going to highlight what they are. So as email developers, we know lots of things that people don't need to think about, and we know why we do things in a certain way and the reasons why. And these are some of the things here that an email developer would know, but maybe no one else would know. Some of them are just accessibility related. So the first thing is we have a container that wraps around the whole of our email that has our language and our direction. And we specifically set the direction to left to right because that is what English is, rather than what it was set at to, which was auto. And the reason we've got it wrapping in a div is because some email clients in the webmail, they strip the body, so we get rid of, and the HTML tag, so they get rid of the language that we might put on there. So we need this container in email specifically to allow us to add that language. And also setting left to right instead of auto is slightly better, just for accessibility reasons. The next one is a table. So we've all had to put a role presentation or role none on a table. We used to have to do it because screen readers and assistive technology read out tables badly, like column one this, row A that. They don't really do that anymore, but we do still need to change the semantic meaning of a table to we're using it for layout purposes. We're not using it as a data table. So that's something that we need to think about that maybe other people wouldn't realize. The next two are a bit more specific to email development. So having the width, sorry, in the style means that Outlook 120 DPI will listen to the width of your table rather than if you just had it as a width attribute. So that's something that only an email developer that's come up against that bug would have to deal with. The next one is the BG color attribute. Whether you use it or not, if you've seen it, you know that you have to put all six of the hex codes, letters or numbers in there. Otherwise it wouldn't work. So we just swapped it from the three Fs to the six Fs, and now it does work with white in there. Whereas before, it wouldn't have worked. So that's a bit of niche HTML that probably email developers know, but maybe no one else does. So that's another piece of knowledge that is kind of valuable. The next one is specific again to Outlook. Paragraph before had a padding of 0.20, but Outlook doesn't respect padding on inline elements, so it only respects margin. So we needed to add change that, sorry, from padding to margin 0.20. And then the last one is I just missed off the closing TD tag, which in browsers probably would have just lived with it and it wouldn't have been a problem. But in email, we know that some email clients would have had a bit of a freak out if the TD wasn't there. Next is accessibility, and one of my favorite quotes that I saw recently from Sarah Gallardo, who's also talking at Litmus, and you should definitely check out her talks, is I'm really sorry if I'm the first person to break this to you, but email is stupid. And email code really is stupid when it comes to accessibility. All of those things I've listed there, setting the role, where we use area labeled, where focus is supported, how do we deal with screen readers, semantic HTML, don't use VML. Maybe use VML. Is VML needed? Can we use it in this use case? Only you as an email developer would know that. Color contrast, font choice, full image emails, some images, some live text. All of these things are accessibility things that email developers will think about in an email marketing role. And when that email is going out, that maybe someone who doesn't know all of these ins and out wouldn't really think about. Next is email client bugs. This is a Slack message that I wrote to Remy when he got to 100 open issues or 100 bugs on the email bugs repo on GitHub. Bit jokingly, like congratulations, but also like as an email developer, we have to know what the different email bugs are. Why does Gmail clip at 100 kilobytes or sometimes shorter? Lots of other email bugs. I know them off by heart because we have to deal with them. There's also kind of nearly 100 that are closed, which are old bugs that we don't have to deal with anymore. But only email developers would know that these exist. And also only email developers might know that this is where you go to find where they exist, and where to search for them. So that Figma plugin tool might not know that. The generative AI may not know that. Um, so really, you need that community, those people with that niche skills who know about these things as email developers to kind of help you fix these things. The next thing is email client updates. I think Litmus once said that email clients on average update every 2 days. When dark mode came around, there was massive things that we needed to update. This small thing, which was Gmail dropped support for background image CSS in July 2023 when there was an update. It appeared on a Thursday afternoon on Email Geek Slack. No one really knew what was going on. And then within 2 or 3 days, we had identified the issue, figured out why there was an issue. We'd reported it to Google so that they knew that there was a problem. We'd found a workaround, launched a blog post, shared all the info about it, and then how it was also being rolled out to different audiences. And then also subsequently sharing that it was being rolled back and that it was good, that it wasn't going to be something that was a problem. So for that week to 2 weeks that kind of it was being rolled out in some countries, being rolled back in other countries, if you wasn't part of that kind of niche, you wouldn't have known that an email background image wasn't working. And you may have email guardian set up from Litmus and you get an update, but you might not know how to fix it. And if it just came out of the blue and you were by yourself, maybe you're just thinking Gmail stopped supporting them. So that's very specific to email development. And if you're not an email developer, you're not going to be doing this. So you're not going to know these kind of things. The next one is the Asians, the personalization, the segmentation, the localization. On the latest email survey, Jaina mentioned to me that a lot of email developers are actually in charge of personalization, when really although that's great, Personalization is kind of decided a lot further earlier on in the process. So the strategy, the planning, the design, the copy, all of that goes into account with the personalization because no one's really just doing first name anymore. There's so much more that we can do. And the developers are kind of managing that, leading that, and they're looking after it. Segmentation, different versions, different dynamic bits of content, different modules for one segment, different modules for another segment, A/B testing, all that kind of stuff is all kind of being done at the development level. Then localization. A client of ours, Nespresso, has 64 different languages. I know that German words are super long, Hebrew, right to left languages, Arabic, where line breaks are in Chinese, that kind of thing. All of these things are important, and only as an email developer would I know that, unless I've localized web pages before. But really, browsers kind of do that automatically now. So we know these niche things, and only email developers are going to know that. Um, so managing all of these things is kind of part of the email development role, and it's definitely not just taking that design and making a HTML. It's kind of applying all of these learnings and everything that we know about it as well, and adding all of this extra content. Next is ESP nonsense. Some just there that are like I've found and recently had to deal with, but there's a whole list on that bad sender repo on GitHub. Salesforce Marketing Cloud strips the audio element. We did a really great Doctor Who email that had the TARDIS sound in it. It was awesome. And then we tried to put it in Salesforce and it just stripped the audio element and there was nothing we could do about it. Made us cry a little bit, but we got over it. But now we know that we don't worry about planning for that. If you use Salesforce, we know we can't use audio. MailChimp breaks interactive CSS is kind of a well-known thing. Spark Post adds a tracking pixel after the opening body element, which means the preview text header doesn't work. Like hack doesn't work. So that's another thing that kind of would throw you what's going on if you didn't know. So knowing this and knowing your ESP really well is kind of something that and it just something that creates a HTML file is not going to be able to do. Automations. We know that developers are putting canvases, flows, journeys, all those kind of things together, depending on what your ESP calls it. How is it triggered? Is it triggered by a webhook? Is there an API call? Who sets them up? Who manages them? Who makes sure they work? Is probably your email developer. They may go to your web team to get that API endpoint to get it kind of figure out what they need, but then they need to implement it and understand how it works in the ESP or however they send emails. So those email developers are doing much more than just working with HTML now. They're working across different web protocols and how different things work. Something recently that I did to set up conversions, I needed to match a product ID from a cart, and I needed regex to do that. Only a developer would be able to work on how regex works. So, like all of these things, no one's ever going to use regex to build a HTML email, but we do need to use it in our role. Links. If you ever managed a campaign from multiple brands across one EDS with different UTM parameters, it's e-commerce, and then you've got all the way through the process, and then that product sold out. Oh my God, you've now got to go change the links, you've got to change the tracking, you've got to change the conversions, the reporting, all of those elements, as well as all of the other stuff that's come before. So links is another thing that email developers have to deal with. APIs, CDPs, webhooks I already mentioned, connecting systems, testing things, refining things, figuring out how they work, making sure they work across the business, everything to do with that kind of CRM part of the role, of bringing that stuff together is falling on email developers, and they're learning a lot more about that as well. Another thing is our developers at Action Rocket work across all of the different mediums, and all of the brands that we work with, their developers have to work across them as well. They're putting together in-app messages, they're triggering push notifications, they're working on mini landing pages. They are all of our team now. We don't call them email coders. We call them CRM developers because they're developing everything for the customer relationship management. And that's kind of where we definitely see our role. They're CRM managers, CRM developers. That's where the role is kind of going in our view, and kind of putting all of that stuff together. We make cool stuff. We go with our brands. Our aim is for 80% of their work to be 80 to 90% of their work to be in those kind of BAU, Figma design to HTML, component EDS led kind of emails. But then for those standout campaigns, that Black Friday, that new program launching, that big sale, they need something extra. And that's where the email developers at Action Rocket really shine because they can do all of this random stuff. So they've worked on interactive emails, they've worked with AMP, they've used image generators, all of those stuff that is kind of, you're not going to do it for every single email. So you may not, as a brand marketer, have a chance to do that. Is something that an agency can kind of help you with. But then also, as an email developer in a brand, if you've managed to automate doing your business as usual stuff, you can work on all that personalization, segmentation, localization, and then all that time that you've gained by letting some Figma tool or WYSIWYG editor create your HTML, you can put into learning this stuff so that next time you have that, you can do that one-off standout campaign rather than needing to go to an agency or someone like that. So the future. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I am hopeful that kind of this is the kind of stuff that's going to happen. So new Outlook. We know new Outlook's coming. By 2026, the majority of Outlook users will be off of the Microsoft Word rendering engine. By 2029, no, they're no longer going to support it with security updates. So we know now that the tables are going and we can move away from tables. We can still use tables if we want. You can still use tables, no one's stopping you. But if you want to change how you develop and you can use things that are not tables, then that's a good thing as well. But I don't think that web developers just straight away, now that Outlook stopped using tables, can just come in and take email development job roles. Um, all of those things I just spoke about are very specific to email client bugs, ESP stuff. You still need to know that, even if tables don't exist. So you might have to change the style of the way you're coding, but you have to change the way you're styling of coding every time Gmail or Apple does an update anyway. So it's just going to be another shift, another new bit of code to learn. And then once you've done it, you know what's there. AI and humans working together. So I think that AI is going to be sticking around, even if it's just going to be kind of in the tools we're using. So we can automate the boring stuff, cut down any repetitive business as usual stuff, and then use it in a way that helps us. So like it says, automate stuff, use it to generate things. Just use it for stuff that isn't email development. Like get it to summarize your meetings, get it to take notes, get it to do transcripts, get it to check your spelling, stuff like that. Let AI do all that stuff, and then you've got more time to learn to code or do fancy stuff. And another thing that I found AI tools are really good for is just doing stuff that takes you time. So in this case, I created a landing page that was going into an ESP. I used JavaScript. When I went to put it in the ESP, turns out it didn't support it in that instance, and I had to use Liquid. So instead of spending 3 hours, because I know Liquid and I know JavaScript, just swapping them, I just put it into an AI tool, said I want this changing from JavaScript to Liquid. It did it in like 5 minutes. Maybe it wasn't 100% perfect, but I could quickly fix things. So something that would have taken me half a day to a day to kind of convert, think about, change, um, it just did it automatically. And within 10, 15 minutes, it kind of saved that project going over budget or over time. So something that can kind of help out is really helpful. So finally, what should you do as an email developer now? The first thing I would say to do is to learn a programming language if you haven't already. It could be JavaScript, it could be Ruby, it could be anything you want to. Basically, you're just getting to learn what a programming language is, the different programming techniques, and then how you can kind of apply that to what you do already. So if you work in Braze, you've got Liquid, you can do for loops, you can do API calls, you can do event calls. In Salesforce, you've got AMP script. I'm sure in every ESP there is a programming language and how you can apply it and think about it. And the thing I've noticed with all of our developers is you have to use it regularly. So if you're learning a new thing, just spend 15, 20 minutes, half an hour a day doing something with the programming language. And then a project will come up, you'll be able to apply it, and then you can learn a bit more about it. And then that's just how you kind of start. It's exactly how you started learning HTML email development. You took someone else's template, you edit it, you saw why things changed, figured it out, grew on that, built some more. Just do the same if you can with programming. The next thing is you could niche down. So email development is going to be needed, but possibly it might only be needed in agencies that are doing stuff like like we're building EDSs, we're building one-off emails. Maybe brands are going to stop doing that in-house and they're going to take it out. So maybe you'll need an agency. Or you could go to be work on a vendor. All of those WYSIWYG editors, all of those plugin tools, they all need to keep up to date with what email development is. So you could be the email developer that develops that Figma plugin that helps in the background, that updates the accessibility, updates that new Gmail thing. So that's kind of one way you could kind of niche down. Another way is to be an ESP specialist. Go for a big one, go for Salesforce, go for Braze, go for Response, Oracle Responses, go for whatever brand of ESP you want to. Pick a kind of well-known one and then learn the syntax, know how it works, figure out the architecture, how the journeys get built, how does it interact with databases, how does HTML email fit in, how can you use a WYSIWYG editor, how can you use the drag and drop editor, do you have to go and use a CMS tool? All of those things you can learn, really learn for that specific ESP, and then you're going to be invaluable to that brand or any brand that uses that ESP. And all of your email development knowledge can be applied in that role. And then lastly, kind of email adjacent roles. If you are an email marketer like I once was that did everything, you know a bit of copywriting, you know a bit of design, you know a bit of strategy. If there was one of those that you really liked, or one of them that you kind of think is your thing, then learn that. Try and do a bit more of that. Do a bit more copywriting in your brand if you can. Design a bit more. Those Figma plugins that go from Figma to HTML, they need someone to design something in Figma. So why don't you do it as the developer that knows what an email can do and what it can't do, and just go in and design what you want? Or planning and strategy. This is something that I've seen lots of email devs kind of grow into, which is they've kind of seen how the email ends up and they want to get further up in the process. They want to figure out the personalization. They want to work with the data. They want to figure out the testing. And that planning, strategy, all of that kind of side of things is another thing that an email developer could definitely move into. And then you know enough email dev that you can kind of know what's possible and then know enough to say, oh, maybe we can't do that. And you don't have to keep up with the latest things if the majority of your time you're doing strategy and planning. So, kind of another thing that you could kind of learn. So that's all I think. So I think that in reality, email developers are not going away, but their job role may be just changing. Maybe they're becoming CRM developers. Maybe they're kind of being much more broader spectrum of things that they develop from in-app push, WhatsApp, even API calls, all that kind of stuff. And I just think that that person at a brand that handles email development is going to do so much more than just change a design into HTML. And I don't think anyone's been doing that for a while. So it's kind of, I don't think emails are going away. They're definitely still needed. Thanks for listening. Check out Action Rocket's website. Find our newsletter, Email Weekly. That's where we play and make cool stuff every week. And check out the website for any resources. Have a good Litmus Live and enjoy. Thanks.